welcomes listeners, mentions evening rain, kettle whistling, and St. Mary Mead at dusk. Where are you listening from tonight? Promises a quiet mystery behind ivy walls. Now, let's begin. Street, Mary Mead. A quiet morning. Frost clings to the garden gate. The kettle hums, steady as a heartbeat. Miss Marple sits by the window, knitting needles clicking in their soft rhythm. The air smells faintly of tea and coal smoke. Nothing unusual, nothing at all. A sparrow lands on the sill, shakes off a thread of ice. Marple glances up, smiles. Her mornings follow the same small order. Tea first, post second, gossip last. She enjoys the predictability of it. It means the world outside is behaving itself. For now. The postboy comes down the lane, boots crunching through frost. He carries a single envelope. Not many letters reach her these days. Mostly parish notices. Sometimes a request for advice about a maid or a mole on a husband's neck. But this one is different. Red wax seal. Cream paper. Her name in looping ink, Miss Jane Marple. No smudges. No haste. Written by a steady hand. She opens the door before he can knock. "Morning, Tom." He nods, breath misting. "From Pendlehurst, ma'am. Handed to the driver last night." Pendlehurst. She repeats the word softly. A name layered with memory. A manor on the northern hills. A woman she once knew. She thanks him, closes the door, and stands still. Envelope cold in her hand. Return address pressed deep into the wax Lady Grey of Pendlehurst Manor, her eyes narrow. That name hasn't reached her ears in years. Not since the argument. Not since the funeral that followed too soon. The kettle clicks off. Steam drifts like a ghost between them, woman and envelope. She sets down her knitting. Her fingers, so sure a moment ago, hesitate. She runs her thumb along the edge of the paper. Feels weight. More than a letter. Perhaps an invitation. Perhaps a confession. The fire pops. Time slows. Marple sits, opens the envelope with a knitting needle, careful not to tear the seal. The wax breaks with a dry crack. Inside, a single folded page, pale blue. Faint scent of lavender and dust. A familiar perfume, once worn by Lady Grey herself. She reads the first line. Her lips tighten. It begins politely, then shifts. A tone beneath the words formal, forced, distant. No affection, no warmth, only purpose. Marple looks toward the clock on the mantel. Its brass pendulum swings once, then stops. The stillness thickens. She knows what that means. The piece of Street Mary Mead has just ended. Something inside that letter has already begun to move. And once begun, such things rarely end well. The clock ticked once, and her calm morning ended with it. The letter unfolds slowly. The paper stiff, cream-colored. Edges pressed flat as if ironed. The handwriting deliberate, graceful, controlled. Every loop precise. Every word measured. My dear Miss Marple, it begins. You will forgive, I trust, the suddenness of this request. There has been an unexpected death at Pendlehurst Manor. Your presence is required for the reading of a will. Miss Marple pauses. Her eyes move down the page. The words carry no affection, only necessity. No warmth, no apology. Lady Grey was never one for pleasantries, but this feels colder than usual. She reads on. Several long-standing servants have been dismissed. Certain irregularities in the accounts demand attention. The solicitor, Mr. Talbot, insists all witnesses to earlier family matters be present. And then you, Jane, were among those witnesses. Her lips tighten. The air feels heavier. The sound of the clock returns, one dull tick every few seconds. It's as though the room itself listens. At the bottom of the page, one inheritance remains unsettled. One truth delayed too long. Bring your logic, Jane. I have need of it once more. Then the signature. Sharp, slanted. Lady Catherine Grey. Marple sets the paper down beside her cup. Her tea has gone cold. She doesn't move for several seconds. The phrase circles her mind. Bring your logic. Not your company. Not your friendship. Your logic. She looks again at the letter. Each word carries an echo, a weight. Dismissed servants, an unsettled inheritance, a death unclarified. 3 phrases, each one a small crack in the same wall. She folds the page carefully, slips it back into its envelope. The wax seal now broken, the emblem of Pendlehurst split clean through, the lion and ivy crest symbols of endurance and pride. Both fractured, appropriate, she thinks. Her mind drifts backward. Pendlehurst Manor, long corridors, the scent of roses in December. Catherine Grey in her silver gown, proud and smiling for the wrong reasons. Her husband quiet, generous, already tired of her pride. And the quarrel, so long ago, a quarrel over truth. She had not spoken to Lady Grey since that summer. They had parted with cold civility, both pretending they were still friends. But truth, Marple knows, does not cool with time. It only waits. Outside, a cart rattles past the gate. The sound breaks the stillness. She looks down at the address again. The ink of Pendlehurst bleeds slightly where her thumb rests. A faint tremor of unease runs through her hand. She stands, puts the envelope atop the mantel beside the stopped clock. 2 silent objects, both holding secrets that refuse to stay buried. Marple pours out the cold tea, fresh water into the pot. Her eyes never leave the letter. No one writes please that coldly, she murmurs. And she knows, before the kettle whistles again, this invitation isn't about inheritance. It's about something unfinished. Something that waited for her to return. The ink dried years ago, but the truth behind it never did. Fog stretched low over the downs, soft, heavy, reluctant to lift. The carriage moved slow through it, wheels hissing on damp gravel. Hastings leaned forward on the reins, gloved hands steady but tense. He disliked the fog, said it muffled the world too much. Miss Marple said nothing. She liked when the world went quiet. It made people easier to hear. The road wound through hedgerows black with frost. The horse's breath rose in clouds. Somewhere far behind, a bell tolled noon. They had been travelling since morning. Marple had brought only 1 bag. Practical as always. Funny, isn't it? Hastings said at last, eyes squinting through the grey. How letters from the past always arrive in winter. She smiled faintly. In summer, truth hides in sunshine. In winter, it stands out. He didn't answer. He wasn't sure if that was comfort or warning. The fog thickened. The road narrowed. Then, faintly through the Vale stone gates, tall, iron-tipped, half-swallowed by ivy, Pendlehurst Manor. The name alone seemed to make the fog colder. Hastings slowed. The gates stood ajar. No one waiting. No sign of a porter. He clicked his tongue. They were expecting us. Marple nodded once. They were expecting something. The carriage rolled forward. Beyond the gate, trees lined the drive like sentinels. Bare branches scratched the mist. The house appeared gradually towers, windows, and stone-carved faces too worn to smile. Large, yes, but not welcoming. They stopped before the main steps. No sound of servants, only the faint ticking of the carriage clock. Marple stepped down carefully. Her boots met cold stone. The air smelled of coal smoke and furniture polish, and beneath that something faintly metallic, old brass, perhaps dust from disuse, or the smell of something recently moved. Hastings lifted her small case. Still the grand house, he said. Yes, she replied, looking up. Still the same secrets. Curtains hung closed on most windows, except one, the upper east wing. A pale curtain shifted once, then stilled. No breeze, no open window, but movement, clear as breath. Someone had been watching, and whoever it was had moved away before being seen. Marple's eyes lingered. Years of habit made her catalogue small things, a light scrape on the gravel, a faint gleam of brass near the steps, a single footprint facing the wrong direction. Not a servant's. The heel mark too narrow. A woman's shoe. She turned toward the door. A brass knocker shaped like a lion, cold to the touch. 3 knocks, echoed down a hall she couldn't yet see. Hastings straightened beside her. "Feels empty," he muttered. Marple listened. From inside, footsteps, measured, slow. Then the lock turned. The door opened, but no one spoke. And in that breathless second between fog and threshold, she felt it again, the sense that this house had been waiting for her. Someone inside Pendlehurst knew she was coming, long before the letter was sent. The drawing-room waited like a stage before the curtain rises. Fire lit, shadows deep, everything too arranged. Silence, polite but heavy, wrapped around the furniture like lace that choked instead of softened. Lady Grey sat near the hearth, wrapped in silk, colour pale as parchment. She looked smaller than Marple remembered. Still proud, still upright, but thinner, hollowed by time or something sharper. "Jane," she said, voice cool. "So good of you to come." Marple inclined her head. "I thought it was time we met again." Across the room, a young man shifted impatiently. Julian Grey, nephew, inheritor of name and impatience both. His fingers drummed on the chair arm, eyes restless, searching corners as if money might hide there. "Terrible weather for travel," he said, a smile without warmth. Marple nodded politely. "Yes, but fog hides less than people think." Lady Grey's companion stood behind her chair, Miss Eleanor Stone. Quiet woman, neat hair, expression gentle to the point of invisibility. Marple's eye caught one small tremor in her hand when she set down a teacup. Fear, not chill. And then Reeves, the butler, tall, careful, deliberate. He moved like a man measuring distance in inches, not steps, eyes downcast but observant. She noticed how he watched Julian's reflection in the glass cabinet. Watched, but never looked directly. The room itself smelled of lemon wax and old coal, everything polished, everything gleaming. Yet the gleam was new, fresh. Someone had scrubbed this place yesterday, maybe even this morning. The surfaces shone unnaturally bright except one. Marple's gaze drifted to the mantel. An ornate clock sat there, bronze, heavy, the kind made when clocks were meant to last longer than people. Its hands pointed to 8 o'clock. Exactly. Not a minute more, not a minute less. Lady Grey followed her look. "Ah, yes, that old thing. Stopped weeks ago." Her tone was careless, too careless. "As if time itself lost interest," she added lightly. Marple stepped closer. "May I?" Lady Grey waved a hand. "Of course, it's only decoration now." Marple leaned slightly, noticed the dust. Uniform on the shelf, yet broken just around the clock's base, a ring of disturbance. The kind left by a hand that had moved something and then replaced it. Recently. She smiled faintly. "Someone still winds it." Reeves spoke quickly. "No, ma'am. No one touches it, I assure you." He said it too soon. Too exact. As if the answer had been rehearsed. Marple's eyes lingered on him for a breath. Then she turned back to Lady Grey. The fire cracked. Behind it, the sound of a door closing somewhere down the hall. Soft, unannounced. Conversation resumed, but politeness had cracked. Underneath it, unease. Everyone waited for something to happen. Even the clock, she thought, was only pretending to be still. Something had touched that clock, and whatever it was, it hadn't finished its work yet. Dinner began with ceremony. Crystal, silver, polished within an inch of its life. Everything gleamed except the people. They looked tired, too careful, too aware of being watched. Lady Grey presided from her seat at the head of the table. A candle burned before her, its flame unsteady, like her pulse. She raised her glass. "Family endures," she said softly. The words dropped flat. No one answered. Julian filled the silence with laughter. Loud, false. He was too quick to speak, too eager to fill quiet spaces. He toasted inheritance. He toasted fresh beginnings. He even toasted Lady Grey's health. But his eyes were on the silver tray near her elbow, the one holding the will. Miss Stone sat beside her employer, fork untouched. Her hands trembled once, then steadied. Her gaze stayed down. Every so often she looked toward the clock on the far wall. Marple noticed. Twice, then a third time. A habit or fear measured in seconds. Reeves poured wine without a sound. Too graceful for a man of his size. He said little, but his eyes, those did not rest. They flicked between Lady Grey and Julian, then back again, calculating, recording, storing every word for later. The roast arrived, perfectly carved, the air filled with its rich scent, and beneath it something faint, something sharp, a whisper of bitter almonds. It brushed the edge of Marple's nose, vanished just as quickly. She stilled her breath, waiting for it again. Nothing. Gone. She looked at her plate, at the serving dish, at the glass of wine near her right hand. All innocent, all ordinary. She said nothing. Her silence was her first defense. Observation first, accusation later. Always. Lady Grey cut her meat slowly, each motion deliberate, strained. When she lifted her knife, her reflection caught in the mirrored sideboard. She turned her eyes away sharply. Wouldn't look at herself, Marple noticed. That too was new. Lady Grey once adored her reflection. Now she avoided it, as if afraid of what it might show. Conversation struggled on. Julian talked of London, of plans, of money not yet his but already spent. Miss Stone corrected him gently once. He ignored her. Lady Grey smiled thinly, then coughed small, dry, brittle. The clock ticked from the mantel. A faint click between sentences. Marple's eyes drifted toward it again. Its pendulum stood still, but as she watched, it moved. Once, a single swing. Then stopped. No draft, no vibration, no reason. Yet it moved. Marple's spoon paused above her soup. No one else noticed. The sound of Julian's voice drowned everything. She folded her napkin slowly, neatly. Her gaze remained on the clock. Its face reflected firelight, steady, warm, deceptive. She smiled faintly. Old clocks don't move by accident, and houses like Pendlehurst don't breathe unless something beneath them stirs. The clock had moved once, and in that single swing, something in Pendlehurst began to wake. The toasts began again, forced. Hollow, words spoken for appearance, not for feeling. Julian's laughter rang too loud. Miss Stone smiled without conviction. Reeves stood like a shadow at the wall, expression neutral. Lady Grey held her glass delicately. Her eyes flickered between them all as though weighing something unseen. May the future, Julian declared, be brighter than the past. He raised his glass higher. The others followed, hesitant. The clink of crystal echoed sharp and thin. Lady Grey hesitated. Her glass hovered near her lips. For a moment, she looked at Marple straight, direct, almost pleading. Then she smiled, a small, tired smile, and she drank, a single sip. No more. Then stillness. Her hand trembled. The stem of the glass slipped from her fingers. It struck the table edge, shattered. The wine spread in a thin, red line across the white cloth. No one spoke. Lady Grey's eyes widened just once. Then her body went rigid. No cry, no collapse in slow motion. She simply ceased to be upright. Her chair tipped backward. A soft thud. Silence. Miss Stone gasped. Julian leapt to his feet, the chair legs scraping harshly. Reeves moved first, swift, precise, almost too ready. He caught Lady Grey's shoulders, eased her to the floor. "Fetch the doctor," someone shouted. No one moved. Marple remained seated, her hands folded neatly on her lap. She watched. Every motion, every reaction. Miss Stone's trembling, Julian's colourless face, Reeves's steady hands. "Heart," Reeves said quickly. Her heart again. Too quick, too certain. He pressed his fingers to Lady Grey's neck, then looked up, grim. "Gone." Julian stared down, lips moving without sound. Miss Stone whispered a prayer. The fire popped once, scattering small embers. Marple turned her head slightly, her eyes fixed not on the body but the mantel. The clock. It had been silent the entire evening, still since the day she arrived. Yet now, a click. Soft, precise. The minute hand shifted forward 1 mark. Just 1. 8 o'clock to 1 past. Marple's gaze held steady. The pendulum swayed once, then stilled again. Her heart did not quicken. Her face showed no alarm, only the faint tightening at the corner of her mouth. Observation, not fear. She'd seen clocks do many things in her life, but never ticked to mark the moment of a death. Julian knelt beside his aunt, murmuring incoherently. Miss Stone sobbed quietly into her hands. Reeves fetched a blanket, too calm, too clean in motion. Marple stood at last. "Call Dr. Haydock," she said softly. Her tone made everyone obey. As the servant ran, she stepped closer to the mantel. The brass clock gleamed faintly in the firelight. Its face caught her reflection, small, clear, unblinking. Time had moved 1 minute forward. Nothing else had. When Lady Grey's glass fell, time itself had answered, and only the clock knew why. The doctor came quickly. Too quickly, some might say. Pendlehurst always had its ways of communication. Word travelled faster than truth. Dr. Haydock entered, coat still damp from the fog. His spectacles fogged too. He rubbed them clear, knelt beside the body, and sighed. "Heart failure," he said after a moment. His tone was flat, practiced, final. A professional's comfort for everyone but the dead. Julian pressed a hand to his forehead. "She'd been unwell for years," he muttered. Miss Stone nodded, eyes red. Reeves stood motionless behind them, face carved from habit. Marple said nothing. She watched. The table remained as it was, plates half full, glasses half raised. Life paused in mid-conversation. The roast cooled slowly under its silver lid. The air, once scented with spice and sherry, now carried something else. Metallic, bitter. A trace of almonds, faint but sharp enough to sting memory. Marple's gaze moved to the shattered glass. It lay near the chair, glittering like frost. She crouched carefully, small hand steady. The rim of the cup had a smear of residue. White, fine, not sugar. Sugar glitters differently. This one clung. Powder. She brushed it lightly with her fingertip. The grain clung to her skin. Then she lifted it to the light. Yes, not sugar. Dr. Haydock stood. Nothing more to be done. Poor woman. Sudden but not uncommon. His bag clicked shut. Marple nodded. Quite right. Though I imagine suddenness depends on one's perspective. Reeves moved forward briskly, voice clipped. "If I may, ma'am, I'll clear the table. No need to distress anyone further." He began gathering the fragments, too swiftly, too deliberately. His sleeve brushed the carpet edge as if sweeping more than glass. Marple rose. "Wait." Her voice was quiet, but sharp. Everyone turned. She pointed. "That shard. By your foot." Reeves froze, bent slowly, retrieved it. "Dangerous, ma'am. Should be discarded." "Of course," she said. Her tone mild, her eyes not. "I'll take that one, thank you. For safety's sake." He hesitated, then placed the shard in her gloved palm. She turned it gently, studying the curved edge. A faint dusting of white along the lip, just as before. No wine stain, no sugar, only powder. "Strange," she murmured, more to herself than anyone. "Some powders dissolve faster than others." Julian frowned. "Surely you don't suspect." "I suspect only what stands before me," she replied evenly. Dr. Haydock gave her a curious glance but said nothing. He had learned years ago not to question that tone. As Reeves cleared the final fragments, she slipped the shard into her handkerchief, folded it twice, placed it carefully in her pocket, then sat again, as if nothing at all had happened. The clock on the mantel ticked once more, soft, measured, its minute hand, unmoving, but its heart alive. The doctor left with his verdict, but Marple already held the real evidence, sharp enough to cut the truth wide open. The parlour emptied slowly. Footsteps faded down the hall. Doors closed. Murmurs turned to silence. Only the clock remained awake. Marple sat still for a moment, listened to the room breathe again, the faint pop of the fire, the whisper of settling wood. Then she rose. Small steps, soft soles on the carpet. Her eyes fixed on the mantel. The clock waited. Bronze casing. Glass front. Engraved initials nearly rubbed away by polish and years. 8 o'clock. Still. Silent. Yet it had moved once. She had seen it. That was enough. She drew closer. Her fingertips brushed the brass. Cold. Too cold for a room with a fire burning. Her hand lingered near the keyhole. There a faint smear. Grey-white. Powder again. Not dust. Dust. Feels soft. This felt sharp. Grainy. Artificial. She took out her handkerchief, wiped gently along the rim. The cloth came away, stained faintly white. She brought it to her nose. Smelled. Almond. And something else. Metallic. Like the edge of a coin. Her brow creased. Cyanide had its ways of lingering where death had touched. She leaned closer. The clock face reflected her eyes, small, sharp, unblinking. 8 o'clock, she murmured. The hour that stopped. The hour that moved again. Her fingers traced the frame. A tiny screw on the side had been loosened and retightened. Recent marks. A careful hand, but not professional. Someone had opened this clock. Someone who knew just enough to hide it again. Marple looked around. No one. Perfect. She took the small pocket knife from her reticule, pressed gently into the groove. The back panel gave a soft click. She lifted it free, inside dust. But not the right kind. Not the fine grey of neglect. This was pale, crystalline, lighter than chalk. It clung to the metal gears in delicate flakes. She touched one. It crumbled instantly. Left a faint almond scent on her glove. Her eyes narrowed. The inside edges of the casing bore a faint residue pattern almost circular, as though a capsule or thin vial had once rested there. Removed recently. No corrosion yet. Recent enough for scent to remain. She closed the panel carefully, replaced it exactly as found. She could almost hear the mechanism breathe. The clock was more than decoration. It had been part of something. Something precise. Something timed. She stepped back. The fire hissed behind her. The silence deepened again. She thought of Lady Grey's words. Bring your logic, Jane. And she had. Logic always listened when others turned away. Only one question mattered now. Who wound the clock this morning? Reeves said no one. Miss Stone said nothing. Julian hadn't noticed it existed. Only Lady Grey had the potiment. Key. Marple looked at the mantel one last time. The key was still there, but too clean. No tarnish. Someone had used it and wiped it after. The clock had kept no time at all. Yet it had counted down to murder perfectly. Inspector Slack arrived just after midnight. Overcoat damp. Shoes muddy from the drive. He looked tired, not sympathetic. He never was. Another death among the gentry, he muttered. Always heart failure, until it isn't. Marple said nothing. He didn't expect her to. The body had been moved to the library. The rest gathered in the drawing room. Faces pale, hands restless. Grief had manners here. It stayed quiet, folded, and upright. Julian paced near the hearth. I told you my aunt was unwell. She had heart troubles for years. Slack's eyes narrowed. Convenient, but I like to check what people call unwell. Julian stopped pacing. His voice sharpened. You're suggesting what exactly? Nothing, Slack replied. Yet, Miss Stone sat on the edge of a chair, gloved hands in her lap. Polite. Still, but her eyes flickered to the door every few seconds, as if escape might enter instead of exit. Reeves stood at attention by the mantel. Impeccable posture. Precise voice. Answering questions before they finished being asked. Slack disliked that kind of efficiency. So did Marple. Dr. Haydock's report, Slack asked. Heart failure, Julian repeated. He saw no reason for suspicion. Doctors rarely do, Slack said dryly. Marple spoke for the first time. Sometimes hearts stop for reasons they didn't start. Slack half smiled. She's right, you know. Then to Reeves. You were nearest when it happened? Yes, sir. I assisted Lady Grey immediately. You touch her glass? Reeves blinked once. Yes, To clear the table, sir. Marple's gaze flicked up. Before or after she fell? He hesitated. After. Ma'am. Of course. Slack looked at her. You have thoughts, Miss Marple. Only questions, she said. Her tone mild, her eyes sharp. Who wounded the clock last? Silence. A small one, but heavy. Even the fire seemed to hush. Julian frowned. The clock? That old thing doesn't even work. Miss Stone looked at her hands. Reeves adjusted his cuff. Slack glanced between them. Well? Someone must have wounded. That key doesn't turn itself. Reeves cleared his throat. I believe it was Miss Stone. He said it gently, as though suggesting kindness, not accusation. Miss Stone's head lifted sharply. Her eyes widened. I? Her voice trembled. I never touch it. Lady Grey disliked anyone doing so. Then how did it tick tonight? Marple asked softly. The room froze again. Julian looked confused. Slack didn't. He'd seen that tone in her before. A small question that meant the world was about to shift. Miss Stone's colour drained. Reeves looked away. Slack leaned back. Seems we've found our first crack, he said. Marple folded her hands neatly. Her voice was calm. The clock moved 1 minute, Inspector. Nothing else in this room did. She looked at Miss Stone, then Reeves. And yet time never moves alone. The clock had ticked once, and every lie in the room began ticking with it. The house had gone quiet, too quiet for comfort. Footsteps muffled, doors half closed, never shut. Grief made people whisper, even when there was no one left to hear. Marple moved through the lower corridor. The air was colder here. Stone floor, oil lamps dimmed to save cost. A draught carried the faint scent of polish and soap. And something else fear. From the servants' stairway, a small figure appeared. Thin, nervous, eyes wide from things she shouldn't have seen. Elsie, the new maid, barely 18. Apron twisted in her hands like a confession already half-spoken. Ma'am, she whispered, looking around first. Could I tell you something? Marple smiled gently. Of course, child. Best whisper before courage fades. Elsie stepped closer, her voice barely more than breath. It's about the clock, ma'am. The one in the drawing room. Marple's eyes stayed calm. Go on. Elsie swallowed. I heard it ticking last night, long after everyone was in bed. She looked down at her shoes. I was bringing coal for the fire. The hall was empty. And the clock, it was ticking, clear as anything. But it's been stopped for weeks, hasn't it? Marple nodded once. Yes, Lady Grey said so. Elsie twisted her apron tighter. I thought maybe I imagined it. But then I saw a light. A light? From the study door. Candlelight. Moving slow. She paused, her eyes darting toward the staircase. Miss Stone, ma'am. I'm sure it was her. She was holding a candle, walking careful. I called her name, but she didn't answer. She just went inside and closed the door. Marple stayed silent a moment. She could hear the faint creak of wood above them. Someone walking on the upper landing. Slow, uncertain, but she didn't look up. Her focus stayed on the girl. You told anyone? Elsie shook her head quickly. No, ma'am. Reeves said not to talk nonsense. Said ladies have reasons for late nights. But I know what I heard. The clock ticked, and Miss Stone, she was afraid. Marple studied her face. Fear spoke truly when words did not. Thank you, Elsie. You did right to tell me. But keep this to yourself for now. Yes, ma'am. Midnight, you said? Elsie nodded. Just before, I think. The big hall clock had struck 12 when I was halfway up the stairs. Marple touched her sleeve lightly. You have good ears, child. Remember that. One day it may keep you safe. The girl managed a nervous smile, curtsied, and slipped back toward the kitchen. Marple waited until her footsteps faded. Then she turned her gaze toward the dark hall ahead. Midnight. The hour the clock had moved. The hour Lady Grey's letter had warned her to remember. She began walking toward the study. Each step measured, soft, deliberate. If Miss Stone had walked that path, she meant to hide something. And if the clock had ticked at midnight, it wasn't keeping time. It was keeping secrets. Midnight had whispered once, and Miss Marple intended to hear the rest of what it said. Morning came dull and grey. Pendlehurst felt heavier in daylight. Fog pressed against the windows as if the night refused to leave. Breakfast untouched. No appetite left in the house. Inspector Slack returned, coat damp, temper drier. He found Marple already waiting in the drawing-room. The clock stood on the mantel, same as before. Still, silent, watching. "Another look at the relic, Miss Marple," he said, his tone half jest, half impatience. She ignored it. Her eyes never left the clock. "Relics," she murmured, "often outlive their owners for a reason." Julian hovered near the door, restless. Miss Stone sat apart, pale and quiet. Reeves entered behind them, carrying the breakfast tray. Too calm, too deliberate, always exact. Marple turned to Slack. "I'd like the clock opened." He raised an eyebrow. "You think it swallowed the poison?" "No," she said softly. "I think it gave it." He frowned, but gestured for his constable. Reeves stepped forward quickly. "Allow me, sir. I've kept the key these 10 years. He retrieved it from his pocket with practiced dignity, but his hand trembled when it met the lock. Marple watched the tremor. "Strange," she said mildly. "Lady Grey told me she kept that key herself." Reeves hesitated. Slack caught it too. "Well then, let's see what the lady was guarding." The back panel clicked open. Dust stirred, faint and grey. Inside, metal gears, dull with age, and something else. A small brass tube fixed behind the mechanism. Thin, cylindrical, out of place. Slack leaned in. "What in the devil?" Marple held up a hand. "Careful. Don't touch the inside." She drew closer. The tube was empty, but around its edge, white residue. Fine, powdery, faint almond scent filled the air. Her eyes narrowed. Cyanide. Reeves shifted his weight. Julian made a sound between disbelief and fear. Miss Stone covered her mouth. Slack stepped back slowly. "A mechanism?" Marple nodded. "Primitive, but deliberate. When the clock was wound, the spring turned the tube. A small chamber could have released powder into the air or into something nearby." "Like her glass?" Slack asked. "Exactly." She straightened. The glass was beside the clock. Lady Grey always drank her sherry there before dinner, every evening. The position never changed. Julian whispered. "You mean it was timed?" Marple looked at the clock face. "Yes, a clock wound for death. Each turn of the key brought the end 1 minute closer." Slack shook his head slowly. "I've seen pistols in canes, blades in umbrellas, but poison in a clock?" Marple smiled faintly. "Death by punctuality, Inspector." She closed the panel softly. Someone here wanted her gone and trusted time to do the work. The fire hissed once. A log split, the sound sharp as a second-hand's tick. Time had become the killer's accomplice, and somewhere in Pendlehurst, the clockmaker still lived among them. By midday, the fog had lifted, but the air inside Pendlehurst remained thick. Slack set up his desk in the study. Papers, ink, stamps, the instruments of truth, he called them. Marple preferred teapots. They usually revealed more. He flipped open a file. "Pharmacy records," he said. "Local chemist reports 3 orders from this address in the past month." His finger tapped each line. "Cleaning supplies Reeves, Polish for Silver Lady Grey herself. And this insect control compound, ordered by post, Miss Stone's name." Marple looked up. "Insect control?" Slack nodded. "Harmless stuff, if used properly. Contains traces of cyanide, though. Not enough to kill, unless someone tinkered." Reeves stood near the door, arms crossed. "I ordered the cleaning solutions myself, Inspector. All quite ordinary." Slack glanced at him. No one's suggesting otherwise yet. Julian leaned against the fireplace, arms folded. "This is absurd. My aunt wasn't murdered by furniture or insects." Marple didn't answer him. Her eyes were fixed on the envelope among the papers. Brown, thin, torn neatly at one edge. Postmarked St. Mary Mead. She frowned. Curious, she murmured. Slack caught the tone. You see something? Yes, she said softly. The envelope. You said it was posted from London? That's what Miss Stone wrote on her order form. Then why? Marple asked. Does the postmark say otherwise? Slack leaned closer. He squinted. St. Mary Mead. Your village. He looked at her. You wouldn't happen to... She smiled, faintly. No, Inspector, I would not. But I do recognize the hand that wrote that address. She drew the paper closer. Her eyes studied each loop and curve. The writing was neat, deliberate, almost timid. Letters pressed too hard, as if fear left its mark. Careful, she said under her breath. Feminine, nervous. A woman who hides what she knows even from herself. Miss Stone sat very still, her gloved hands twisted in her lap. Slack turned to her. You sent this? She nodded slowly. Yes. Lady Grey asked me to order it. She had trouble with insects in the conservatory, that's all. Marple's gaze lingered. Her tone stayed soft. Lady Grey disliked strong smells, did she not? Miss Stone blinked. Yes, very much so. Then why order something that reeks of almonds? Silence. Slack's pen stopped mid-scratch. Reeves looked down. Julian's arms dropped. Miss Stone's throat worked before her voice returned. I didn't notice the scent. Marple folded the envelope gently. Perhaps not. Or perhaps you noticed something else. Something you feared more than smell. Slack cleared his throat. We'll have the chemist confirm where that parcel was filled. He looked to Marple. What do you make of it? She met his eye. Poison travels by post, Inspector, but guilt always arrives by hand. She turned the envelope once more. Ink blot at the corner. Her own village's mark beneath the lie of London. The letter had come from St. Mary Mead, but the handwriting belonged to a woman who swore she'd never left Pendlehurst. The study smelled of dust and polish, the kind of room that pretends to be quiet while listening. Books lined the walls in neat, unread rows. A fire smouldered, too weak to warm the air. Marple entered alone. Inspector Slack trailed behind, notebook ready. He preferred statements. She preferred silences. On the far wall hung portraits, generations of Greys, men with stern eyes, women with pearls and patience. And in the center, one newer, larger frame, Lady Grey, her husband beside her, and between them, a younger woman, nurse's uniform, calm face, familiar eyes. Marple stopped. Miss Stone, she said quietly. Slack glanced up. The companion? The same, Marple replied. 15 years younger. He scribbled. She worked here before? Yes, during Sir Edward Grey's final illness. Her tone sharpened slightly. And after his death, she disappeared for a time. Slack frowned. You think there's history? There's always history, Inspector. The living just forget to bury it properly. She stepped closer to the portrait. The frame was heavy oak, polished smooth. But something about the dust caught her eye. A clean ring around the edge. Different from the rest. It had been moved recently. Within days, maybe hours. Her gloved finger traced the line. Not idle habit. Observation. See this, she said. Someone lifted it, wiped beneath, then replaced it, crooked by a fraction. Slack squinted. I'll never understand how you notice things like that. It's simple, she said mildly. Truth always leaves fingerprints, even on furniture. She tilted the frame forward slightly. Behind it, a gap in the wallpaper. Small, square, enough to hide a letter, perhaps a folded paper. Slack moved in quickly. Hold it steady. He reached behind, drew out a thin envelope. Unsealed, yellowed with time. Inside one page. Marple took it, unfolded slowly. The ink had faded, but the handwriting was strong. Sir Edward Grey's. She read aloud. Addendum to my last will and testament. To Miss Eleanor Stone, for services of loyalty and discretion, I leave half my personal estate. Slack exhaled sharply. Well, that explains motive. Marple didn't answer. She was looking at the date. Dated 3 days before his death. she said. And never executed, never witnessed. Lady Grey must have found this later and hidden it. Slack's eyes widened. Then Miss Stone was supposed to inherit. Supposed to, Marple repeated softly, but didn't. She placed the letter back on the desk. The clock, the poison, the secrecy, it all fits one pattern, unfinished business disguised as duty. Slack muttered. And the missing formula people gossiped about back then? Marple's eyes drifted to the fire. Perhaps not chemical, Inspector. Perhaps financial. Perhaps personal. Formulas are not always kept in bottles. She looked once more at the photograph. 3 faces. 2 dead. 1 still lying. Her finger brushed the lower corner of the frame. The dust smudged under her touch. Recently moved, she murmured again, and moved by someone who knew exactly what it hid. The portrait had concealed a will, and within that secret, a promise someone was willing to kill to keep. The frame was heavier than it looked. Old oak. Glass thick enough to last generations. Marple set it flat on the desk. The surface gleamed under the weak morning light. Inspector Slack stood behind her. Julian hovered by the door, pretending not to watch. Miss Stone sat rigid in a nearby chair, her hands clasped, knuckles white. Reeves waited in silence, face unreadable. Marple took a small knife from her reticule, the same one she used for envelopes. She slipped the blade beneath the edge of the frame. Slow, gentle, no haste. Glass lifted with a soft sigh. Behind it dust, and a crease in the paper backing. Someone had sealed it clumsily once, then hidden it again. She peeled back the lining. A folded paper rested there, yellowed but strong. Wax flaked at the edges. No seal remained. Dated, she whispered. 1931. Slack leaned closer. What is it? Marple unfolded the page carefully. Ink faded to brown, but still legible. Her eyes moved slowly across each line. Addendum to the will, she said quietly. Her voice steady, not triumphant. To Miss Eleanor Stone, for loyalty and devotion, I leave half my personal estate. She looked up. The silence in the room deepened. Julian's mouth opened, then closed again. He took a step forward. That's absurd. My uncle never mentioned. Marple raised a hand. The handwriting is Sir Edward's. The date is clear. 3 days before his death. Unwitnessed, unexecuted, but real. Miss Stone's breath caught. Her lips trembled. She didn't deny it. Couldn't. The truth sat between them like a ghost. Slack exhaled slowly. So the companion was once the nurse. Promised half the fortune. And when the lady found out, she buried it. Marple finished. Behind her husband's face. The perfect place for guilt to hide. She refolded the paper, her gloved fingers precise, respectful. Lady Grey feared scandal. To reveal this would disgrace the family, so she concealed it instead. But secrets grow restless, Inspector. They wait for movement. Julian's voice cracked. She had no right to keep it hidden. Marple's eyes found his. And yet she did, for 15 years. And now she's dead. And the house whispers again. She turned back to the frame. The photograph watched her. 3 faces. Sir Edward, calm and confident. Lady Grey, proud, eyes cold. And Miss Stone, younger, gentle, hopeful. Time had aged them all except the truth. Marple replaced the paper behind the glass, pressed it flat, as if tucking a child back to bed. Then she spoke softly, almost to herself. The past never dies. It waits. Slack said nothing. Neither did the others. Only the clock answered one slow tick from the mantel. The will had slept behind glass for 15 years, and now, awakened, it was ready to accuse the living. The drawing room felt smaller now. Curtains drawn, fire dim. Only the ticking clock dared to speak. Inspector Slack sat near the window, arms folded. Julian paced behind him, impatient, angry, afraid. Reeves waited at the doorway, too still. And at the center, Miss Stone, hands trembling, eyes lowered. A cup of tea before her, untouched. Marple poured her own quietly. The small sounds of china softened the tension. She stirred once, set the spoon aside. "Sugar?" she asked. Miss Stone shook her head. Her voice came faint. "No, thank you." Marple nodded, sipped, then spoke gently. "You wound the clock, didn't you?" No accusation, no raised tone, just calm fact, placed in the air like a mirror. Miss Stone froze, the color drained from her face. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then she exhaled, slow and broken. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. She didn't speak denial, only silence, and silence was enough. Slack leaned forward. "Well?" Miss Stone's lips trembled. "I didn't mean—" Her words stumbled, fell apart. "I didn't mean to hurt her." Marple's tone stayed soft. "Tell us." Miss Stone gripped her handkerchief. "She treated me kindly once, long ago, when I was young. Then she found the letter, the one her husband wrote. Everything changed. I became a reminder she wanted to erase." Her eyes blurred with tears. "She dismissed me, but I came back, said I needed work. She let me stay as companion, not as person." Marple nodded slowly. "The clock?" Miss Stone swallowed. "I knew she wound it every Sunday morning. I only meant to frighten her. A small amount in the gears, just enough to release a trace when she turned the key. Enough to make her ill. Enough to make her remember what she'd done." Her voice broke. "I misjudged. Slack wrote fast. And where did you get the poison?" She looked down. "Reeves. He said he could help. He knew how to handle such things. He told me the dose. Said it would only make her faint." She turned toward the butler, her eyes pleading. "He promised it would be harmless." Reeves didn't blink. His voice came steady, almost polite. "You misunderstand, miss. I merely fetched what you asked for." Marple set her cup down. "No," she said softly. "You fetched more than that. You fetched opportunity." Reeves stiffened. Slack's gaze sharpened. "Meaning?" Marple's eyes stayed on Miss Stone. "She meant to frighten. He meant to kill. 2 threads, 1 clock, each believing the other a fool." Miss Stone covered her face. Sobs muffled into her hands. Reeves took 1 half-step back, small, guilty, instinctive. Marple rose slowly, her voice barely above her. Whisper. "Intent may begin as sorrow, Inspector, but when joined with greed, it always ends in silence." The clock ticked once. Tea cooled. Confession hung in the air like smoke that refused to fade. 2 hands had wound the clock, one for guilt, one for gain, and together they'd built the perfect death. Inspector Slack stood by the mantel, notebook closed, face unreadable. The rain outside tapped lightly on the windowpane, steady, rhythmic, almost patient. He spoke first. "Let's have it straight, then." Marple nodded, her voice quiet, measured. Reeves planted the tube inside the clock. Miss Stone wound it. Each played their part, believing themselves in control. Reeves said nothing, his hands behind his back, jaw set. Miss Stone wept softly into her handkerchief. Julian hovered near the doorway, pale and uncertain, the air of disaster, not fortune. Slack began pacing. "So the clock was the weapon." He looked at Marple. "Explain how it worked." She gestured toward it. Simple. Calm. The brass tube had a narrow chamber. It held a powdered cyanide compound. Reeves fitted it behind the spring. When Miss Stone wound the clock, the motion rotated the chamber. At 8 o'clock, the mechanism released the vapor through the small vent near the face. Slack frowned, and Lady Grey's sherry glass was right beside it. "Yes, she always drank there before dinner. The vapor dissolved easily into the wine, odor faint, quick to vanish." Julian's voice shook. "She never knew?" "No," Marple said gently. "She would have felt only dizziness, a pause between life and death measured by minutes." The rain thickened outside. Drops ran down the glass like quiet tears. Slack sighed. "So Reeves set the trap." "He did," Marple said. "But Miss Stone wound it. Without her, the clock would never have moved." Reeves straightened. "I didn't kill her." Marple met his eyes. "You?" "Intended to. You supplied the poison. You told Miss Stone it was harmless. You relied on her guilt to hide yours. Slack's voice hardened. She trusted you. Reeves looked away. She was a fool. She thought she was teaching the lady a lesson. I thought she'd finish what fear could not. Marple folded her hands. You both wound the same death, Reeves. You only differed on who should take the blame. Slack wrote a final note, tore it from his pad. That ticking, he said quietly. That was your mistake. Marple nodded. Yes. The vapor escaped early. A trace before the hour. The clock made a single sound it hadn't made in years. One tick. I heard it. That was when I knew time itself was lying. Reeves turned toward her. How could you know from one tick? She smiled faintly. Because clocks, like people, do not speak unless something inside them has moved. The room stayed still. Only the rain filled the silence. Miss Stone's tears fell quietly into her lap. Julian lowered his head. Reeves stared at the floor. Marple looked at the clock once more. Its face gleamed in the dim light. Unmoving. Silent now. Exactly as it should be. The ticking had betrayed the killer and proved that even silence keeps perfect time with truth. The rain had stopped. Pendlehurst sat wrapped in stillness. The house no longer hid its secrets, it simply endured them. Inspector Slack closed his notebook. The confession was enough, yet something still hung unsaid. Marple sat near the fire, hands folded, gaze steady. She waited. Truth always revealed itself after silence. Reeves stood between the windows. No attempt to flee. Just the posture of a man cornered by his own reflection. Miss Stone sat across from him, pale, spent, hollow. Her tears had run dry. Slack spoke first. So it comes down to motive. Why kill a woman who'd already lived her life? Reeves' jaw tightened. He said nothing. Marple's voice was soft. Because she discovered something she wasn't meant to. Julian lifted his head. Discovered what? Marple looked at him gently. Your aunt had been reviewing the accounts. Estate funds had vanished, small sums, over years, hidden under maintenance and repair. Quiet theft. Clever, until it wasn't. Julian's eyes widened. Reeves? The butler didn't answer. He didn't need to. Marple continued. She confronted him 2 nights ago. Told him she would write to the solicitor in London. That letter was never posted. Reeves saw to that. Slack crossed his arms. So the motive's clear. Money. Marple shook her head slightly. Not only money, Inspector. That explains theft, not murder. Her gaze moved to Miss Stone. You loved him once, didn't you? The woman flinched as though struck. Yes, she whispered. Years ago. Before Lady Grey dismissed me. Reeves was kind then. Said he'd marry me once he'd saved enough. I believed him. Marple's tone stayed gentle. And when you returned, he believed your affection could still be used. Miss Stone's lips trembled. He said she meant to turn him out, that she'd ruin him. I thought I was helping him, helping us. Reeves looked away. Foolish woman, he muttered. I only needed her to wind the clock. Slack's voice cut through. You used her. Reeves shrugged once. Everyone uses someone. Even Lady Grey used me, until she decided I wasn't useful enough. Marple's eyes softened. Devotion, she said quietly. When twisted, poisons more than cyanide. No one spoke. The clock on the mantel gleamed dully in the light. It no longer ticked, its purpose finished. Miss Stone's shoulders shook once. I didn't want her dead, she said. I only wanted to frighten her. Her voice broke, and he wanted the rest. Slack nodded grimly. The law will decide which of you killed her, but the truth's already done. Marple rose slowly. She looked at the clock, then at Reeves. You stole time, Mr. Reeves, but time always collects its debt. He said nothing. Didn't need to. The truth was louder than anything he could offer. The clock had stopped, but its echo lingered. The sound of devotion turned to ruin. Street Mary Mead again. Soft rain on the window. The kettle sings. Miss Marple moves quietly about her kitchen. No murder now, only tea. Hastings sits at the table reading the morning paper. He looks up, smiling faintly. You solve clocks faster than time does, Miss Marple. She paws, steam curls like memory. Time, she says, only hides truth, but never buries it. He laughs softly. Still, quite the contraption, that clock. Poisoned by minute hand. You'd think the devil himself designed it. Marple stirs her cup gently. The devil rarely builds, Mr. Hastings. He only wins what others prepare. Outside, a church bell rings. Children run past the gate. Life resumes its quiet pattern. Tea, talk, tranquility. All back where it began. Marple lifts her cup. For a moment, her reflection ripples in the surface. Calm, composed, but her eyes stay thoughtful. Every crime, she murmurs, is only a story that time tried to forget. Hastings glances up. Another case closed, then. She smiles faintly. Closed, yes, but never finished. Steam drifts upward. The kettle hums again, and outside a clock strikes 8. She listens, just once, almost calm. Time has always had one secret left unspoken. Edward's voice returns, gentle, familiar. So then, friends, what gave it away? The ticking, the clock, or the powder on the glass? A pause. Warm, inviting. Tell us in the comments below. Your theories keep St. Mary Mead alive. Soft music rises, faint piano, crackling fire underneath. He smiles in his tone. Tomorrow, another kettle will boil, and another quiet crime will whisper through St. Mary Mead. The sound fades. Only the hum of the kettle remains. Then silence. Perfect.